Hey babe, what time are you off work? I've already set out from school with your birthday gift. My girlfriend, Michelle, sent me a message. I glanced at my phone, a slight smile creeping onto my face. Just then, a coworker sent me a link saying, "This person who posted this looks a lot like your girlfriend." Thinking of breaking up, but the guy is 8 years older, wealthy, and really spoils me. Can you give me some advice, girls? I clicked on the post. My boyfriend is 8 years older than me, a programmer, not the best looking but super rich. He works a lot but really dotes on me and is quite generous with his money. But honestly, older guys just don't compare to younger guys. I'm thinking of breaking up but feel a little reluctant. Can you give me some advice, girls? The picture showed her with another guy in a hotel, with Michelle's manicured hand resting on the guy's abs, a glaring sight. Their faces were both blurred out. My hands started shaking uncontrollably, and I could barely hold my phone steady. That little. The post was only an hour ago. The location she tagged was the hotel I booked for today. When I arrived at the hotel restaurant, Michelle was already sitting at the table. I softened my steps so she wouldn't notice me approaching. Michelle's sweet voice floated over. "Wow, you're really impressive. My legs are so sore." "Don't worry, he definitely won't find out. He probably has to work late." "Ugh, older men can't compare to you at all. If it weren't for his money, I would have dumped him a long time ago." "Just wait a bit longer, why are you in such a hurry?" "I'm doing this for our future. The old man is about to get a bonus for the project, it's a big one, and I'm planning to have him buy me a car. That way it'll be convenient for us to go out later, right?" Guys like that just want a young girl on their arm for the sake of appearances. There's no real sincerity. "Baby, believe me, you're the only one in my heart." "Hee hee, alright, then next Friday at our usual place, I'll book the room." I stood not far behind her, listening to her flirt with another man in a way I had never heard before. Every word she said made my fists tighten more. As she hung up the phone, I quickly stepped forward, closing the distance in a few strides. I raised my hand and slapped her hard. "You little tramp." When Michelle saw me suddenly appear, her eyes widened in shock, panic etched on her face. "Darling, let me explain. It's not what you think. It was just that I lost a dare with my friends, so that's why." I turned to leave, but Michelle grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. "Please, you have to believe me, it really isn't what you heard." Tears streamed down the corners of Michelle's eyes. She looked so beautiful while crying that it tugged at my heart. If this were before, seeing her cry would have made my heart ache like crazy. But right now, I just felt incredibly sick. I yanked my hand away, and Michelle fell to the ground. Because she lost her balance, her head hit a nearby chair hard. Michelle clutched her head, looking at me with a pitiful expression. "Victor, we've been together for so long, don't you have any trust in me? Are you really going to break up with me over a few jokes?" I laughed coldly. "You know whether it was a joke or not. I feel dirty being with a woman like you." I didn't look at her again and turned to walk away. But Michelle got up from the ground and stubbornly followed me. "Please, I didn't mean to be so harsh, it's just that you misunderstood me. Please, let's not break up, okay?" It was pouring rain outside the hotel. I didn't bother to open an umbrella and hurriedly got into the car, locking the doors behind me. Michelle followed closely behind, completely drenched. Her thin dress clung to her body, revealing an attractive figure. In the past, I would have found her charming and lovely. Now it made me feel sick. Deep within Michelle's innocent eyes, there was a hint of reluctance. "Darling, I swear what I just said was really just a joke. If you don't believe me, you can call and ask." She held out her phone as if to pass it to me while gripping the door handle. I let out a sarcastic laugh. "Michelle, I may not have been in a relationship before, but I'm not an idiot. Do you see the word, fool, written on my face?" After saying that, I lightly turned the steering wheel and hit the gas. Michelle was caught off guard and fell into the rain. The tires splashed through a puddle, soaking her with dirty water. "Victor!" She shouted at the top of her lungs, looking utterly wronged. Whenever I didn't cater to her in the past, she would make that same expression. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and intentionally slowed down. Sure enough, she got up and came toward me again. I had a quick thought and tapped the control screen inside the car, setting the destination to the nearest hotel. Then I shifted into reverse and backed the car up in front of Michelle. "Get in." Michelle immediately lit up with a smile. "Darling, I knew you loved me." She pulled out a tissue from her bag to wipe her face, then hurriedly got into the car. I shot her a disdainful glance. But I still pretended to be concerned and said, "Can't you move when you see me driving?" Michelle pouted. "I know you're upset, but I can't just let you stew in silence." I maintained a serious expression. "So if you want me to forgive you, does that mean I can do whatever I want today?" Michelle eagerly nodded. "Yes, today is all yours to decide." I chuckled mockingly to myself. She really thought of me as some naive, pure-hearted fool. When we arrived at the hotel, Michelle immediately dashed into the bathroom. I noticed her phone lying on the bed beside me, picked it up, and grabbed her laptop too. I backed up all the chat records and photos and videos from her phone. I couldn't believe my eyes. This woman, a sweet little bunny in front of others, was a total vixen behind closed doors. Aside from me, her official boyfriend, she had 5 or 6 other casual partners. She presented a different side to each man. I glanced toward the bathroom, my hatred growing stronger. "Darling, I'm all done washing up," Michelle's voice came from the bathroom. At the same time, everything I ordered had arrived. When Michelle walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a bathrobe, I had already packed everything up. On the small coffee table beside me, there was a pile of strong liquor. The embarrassment on Michelle's face disappeared in an instant. "Honey, what do you mean by this?" I took a puff of my cigarette and pointed at the liquor beside me. An apology should come with a bit of sincerity, right? I knew her stomach wasn't good. No matter what kind of gathering it was in the past, I always protected her well. I would drink until I vomited and even had stomach bleeding just to shield her from alcohol. Now, it was her turn to repay me. Michelle's eyes suddenly turned red. "As long as you can believe that I love you, I'm willing to do anything you ask." With that, Michelle didn't hesitate to grab a bottle of liquor and poured it down her throat. After one bottle, she was already unsteady. "Is that enough?" I watched her impassively. If it weren't for the explicit chat logs, photos, and videos I saw between her and others, I might have been deceived by her act. "Not enough, huh?" With that, she picked up another bottle and started chugging. But before she could finish the second bottle, she completely collapsed. I let out a sneer and kicked the fallen Michelle. Good, she was thoroughly drunk. I had plenty of time to execute my grand plan. I picked up Michelle's phone again. I found all the contacts of the backup guys numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in her social media and organized them together. Then I took out my spare SIM card and sent out a message to those guys. "September 28th, Bohai Hotel, 9 p.m., don't be late, Michelle." I chose this day because it's Michelle's birthday, and I'm going to make sure she has an unforgettable one. As I expected, those guys quickly replied to the message. A few of them who had girlfriends were very brief in their responses. But there was one special person, Ethan, who was also on the phone with Michelle today. He even sent a picture directly to Michelle's phone. "What do you think of this one?" I glanced at Michelle lying on the floor and felt like strangling her. But giving up my entire future for a woman like this wasn't worth it. I marked that message as unread and then left the hotel. Early the next morning, Michelle's call came in. "Victor, what do you mean by this?" I twirled the lighter in my hand. "It means exactly what you saw, Michelle. You've transferred quite a bit of money from my card, and if I say you're stealing, I'm right. You better think of a way to pay it back quickly." In the short year that I dated Michelle, I spent no less than $200,000 on her, off and on. She took the money I gave her to go watch movies, dine, and book hotel rooms with other men. Now, asking her to pay me back seems utterly impossible. Michelle was just an undergraduate, and at this moment, she was truly panicking. "Victor, what do you want from me? I'm 22, and here I am with you, an older guy. Aren't you the one benefiting from this? All that money was given willingly, now you want to turn on me? That's disgusting." She was furious, her true colors revealed. Victor, you want me to pay you back for what you spent while we were dating? Are you even a man? I chuckled lightly and hung up the phone. Despite Michelle's frantic calls and messages, I ignored her completely. I hired a lawyer, and soon she would receive a letter from him. Given the strong evidence, the lawyer said that if I pursued compensation for my emotional distress, it's very likely I would win. As for the theft charge, that was just meant to scare her. In the days that followed, I kept a private investigator tailing Michelle, watching her every move. Sure enough, after receiving the letter from my lawyer, Michelle panicked and made some reckless decisions. Watching the information sent by the private detective, I squinted my eyes. A good show is about to begin. I was sitting in the hotel lobby with my laptop, facing the direction of the elevator. Soon, Michelle walked out of the elevator, holding onto a married man. She was heavily made up, wearing a red spaghetti-strap dress, her fair skin exposed, with little red marks dotted across her neck. Anyone with half a brain would know what had just happened. The middle-aged man's hand was on Michelle's waist, occasionally giving it a squeeze. "Hey, stop it, there are so many people here. Don't you like it?" The middle-aged man's lustful eyes roamed over Michelle's face. USL*T. How dare you seduce my husband? At that moment, a woman in a trench coat burst in through the front door. The important character arrived sooner than I expected. The woman had long, wavy hair and immediately grabbed Michelle by the hair. She raised her hand and slapped Michelle several times. "You little hussy, so young and already ruining other people's families. Just wait until I tear your face off." The greasy middle-aged man was henpecked and simply stood aside, not daring to say a word. Michelle wanted to fight back, but since her hair was being tugged, she couldn't break free. The greasy man's wife was swinging her arms, fiercely pinching and hitting Michelle. "Ah!" Michelle screamed and cried, "Honey, please save me." She acted cute and pitiful toward the middle-aged man. But that only fueled the woman's rage even more. "You're such a bitch, daring to flirt right in front of me. Since you're so cheap and shameless, I'll make sure everyone sees just how low you are." The woman, tall and strong, threw her bag aside. One hand gripped Michelle's hair while the other started tearing at her clothes. Michelle screamed, "No!" But she was no match for this woman's strength. Before long, the thin straps of her dress were ripped open, exposing a large part of her pale chest. Michelle was beaten and bruised, sitting on the ground. The woman squatted in front of her. "You little slut, still in school, huh? If you don't want your family to find out, then get on your knees, bow 3 times, and say you'll never do something so shameless again." The scene of a wife beating up the mistress had already drawn a crowd at the hotel. Some even pulled out their phones to record videos. Michelle covered her face, humiliated as she knelt on the ground. "I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I won't do it again. I won't do it again." With her pleading cries, her head hit the ground heavily. At that moment, the police had arrived. Michelle and the greasy couple were taken away. As Michelle reached the door, she suddenly turned to look in my direction. She glared at me, about to say something, but was pulled away. I casually clicked around on my computer. On her university social media page, that dramatic video had just appeared on the homepage. "Oh my gosh, is this girl from our school? Yeah, I've seen her. Which college's campus queen is she from again? I remember she has a boyfriend. He came to pick her up from school before. I don't get it. Why would she just ruin her own life like that? I can't stand it. People like her are just shameless. I just saw her on a video app. I really want to thank her. We're famous now." In an instant, the video spread throughout the entire university. Michelle became the target of everyone's scorn. "It's you. Victor, you did this on purpose, didn't you?" On the other end of the phone, her voice was hoarse from shouting. I flicked the ash off my cigarette. I said I didn't do it. "Do you believe me?" "Victor, how could you be so cruel?" I chuckled lightly. "I didn't force you to be the mistress." Michelle seemed to be on the verge of breaking down, but soon her voice softened. "Victor, it's all my fault. Just let me go, okay? Just consider it a favor. I really can't come up with that much money. Victor. I glanced at the calendar. The day after tomorrow would be the 28th. Sure. Michelle paused. Victor, what are your conditions? 8:30 the day after tomorrow at the Bohai Hotel, you'll find out then. After saying that, I hung up the phone. Michelle had been talked to by the school because of her being the mistress, but it was just a warning and admonition. Aside from her reputation taking a hit, she didn't face any real consequences. However, playing with someone else's feelings only came with this slight price. That was far from enough. The next day, Michelle's tearful video went viral on the school's homepage. In the video, she was crying heartbrokenly. I'm sorry everyone, I know I was wrong and from now on, I won't do it again. I didn't want to act this way. It was because my boyfriend cheated on me that I lost my mind and did something wrong. She said, I shouldn't have let myself be betrayed and thought about hurting others. Please believe me, I really know I was wrong. In the comments section of the video, Michelle also attached a photo of me and a female colleague at a restaurant. Although she blurred it out, people who knew me could still recognize me. For a while, the onlookers were split in opinions. Some said Michelle was also suffering and called me a scumbag. Others labeled Michelle as cheap and malicious, saying that if she got hurt, she wanted to hurt others too. The two opposing sides argued fiercely. After she posted the video and photo, she went into hiding like a turtle. I closed the webpage and clicked back into the PPT on my computer. Since she wanted to play the clown, I wouldn't stop her. If she wanted to struggle, I'd play along for a while. Sometimes, it's more interesting to operate with a dull blade. At 8:30 p.m. on the 28th, at Bohai Hotel, I sat on the leather sofa, watching Michelle dress up like a pure little flower. Victor, tell me, what do you really want? Don't you dance really well? Come on, show me a striptease. I had seen the video Ethan recorded for Michelle on her phone. She could definitely move, dancing in a seductive yet classy way. As long as you perform well today, I can. Before I could finish my sentence, Michelle gritted her teeth and said, Fine, I'll do it. A faint blush crept to the corners of her eyes, and her gaze towards me was full of resentment. I watched her barefoot on the hotel carpet, while my ears picked up the commotion outside. At exactly 9, as Michelle had taken off all her clothes, the door swung open, revealing 7 guys with different looks standing at the entrance. They exchanged glances, and then all their eyes settled on Michelle. Aside from Ethan, the other guys had malicious smiles on their faces. Michelle, you sure know how to have fun. Michelle froze in place, her expression shifting as she looked at Ethan. In a panic, she picked up her clothes from the floor. Shaking as she dressed, she said, Ethan, please let me explain. Ethan's expression darkened, looking at her as if she was something disgusting. Michelle, I thought you were just playing a little fun game with me, huh? Ethan stepped in front of Michelle and slapped her hard. Michelle, are you that cheap? She fell to the ground from his hit. Disgusting. Ethan spat and turned to leave. Michelle tried to chase after him, but the other guys blocked her way. Don't go, Michelle, we haven't even started having fun yet. Let go of me. She cried, pushing them away with all her strength, her face full of tears. I shot a glance at those guys, and they took the hint and backed off. What the hell? I walked up to her and lifted her chin. Why are you crying? Isn't this the game you liked? Michelle broke down and cried, her face filled with despair. Victor, among all these people, only Ethan was the one she truly loved. And starting today, that was all over. Michelle had been in a relationship with me while spending all the money she got from me on Ethan. She did everything to please Ethan. To maintain her relationship with him, she kept a lot hidden. Now, everything had fallen apart. You really like him, huh? Okay, but the guy you like thinks you're dirty. I dumped the ice water from my hands over Michelle's head. She sat on the floor, crying until her voice was hoarse. Victor, what do you want from me to let me go? I smashed the cup in my hand, shattering it with a loud crash, sending shards flying onto Michelle's hands. Let you go? Why should I? Michelle, I'm telling you, this isn't over. I printed out those photos and chat records and tossed them at Michelle's feet. Michelle, You did this yourself, you can't deny it, right? Michelle picked up the photos from the ground, her fingers trembling. Victor. She reached out, grabbing my pant leg and shaking her head violently. Please don't send these out, I'll die, I'll really die. I squatted down, watching her cry like a wilted flower, feeling completely unmoved. Then beg me. Michelle nodded. Okay, I'm begging you, I'm begging you. She knelt down at my feet, her eyes filled with desperation. But my heart was as cold as a stone. I remember you relied on me to polish your paper, and you got the chance to study abroad as an exchange student. How about this? You go to the school tomorrow and admit that you didn't write the paper yourself, and voluntarily give up your chance to be an exchange student. Michelle froze for a moment, the color draining from her face. Are you trying to kill me? I have nothing left. People are pointing at me at school, the person I like. Seeing me, Michelle's words halted. Now you want me to give up my chance to study abroad. How am I supposed to live? I bit my lip and clicked on a video on my phone. If this video gets out, how are you going to live? Michelle ultimately decided to give up her exchange student opportunity. As a result, her scholarship was also revoked. Her days at school weren't easy, she was isolated and targeted. Seeing her like this made me feel a strange relief. Originally, I hadn't planned on bringing those things back up. But then, Michelle did something I didn't expect. On Monday at work, my colleagues gave me strange looks. I sensed trouble brewing. Sure enough, a colleague I get along well with sent me a link to an article. It was Michelle's personal account. She called me a complete jerk, old and stingy, claiming I made her pay me back after breaking up with her. She even forged a receipt. I couldn't help but laugh in anger. Still so young and naive. I casually opened my mobile banking app and pulled up my transaction history from the past year. At that moment, Ethan approached me. I know you have photos and videos of her with someone else, give me a copy. I looked at the still somewhat innocent guy in front of me and took a drag from my cigarette. Why should I? Ethan's eyes turned red, his expression twisted with rage. I know you want to get back at her too. If you hand those over to me, I'll find a way to make her wish she was never born. I handed those things over to Ethan. But for some reason, Ethan didn't disclose them. Instead, he stormed into the university and beat up Michelle. Victor, where are you? I need to see you. Michelle's call came in again. I sat in the cafe, rubbing my forehead. Cafe. As soon as Michelle appeared, she splashed coffee all over my face. I leisurely pulled out a tissue from the table and gently wiped myself off. The bruises on her body, with red and purple patches, were glaringly obvious. Victor, I only cheated on you. Are you trying to drive me to my death? I'm only 22 and you're already 30. You can eat young grass without a second thought, but I can't find a few more options? Don't I have the right to choose? Do you know how long I've been chasing Ethan? From 18 to 22, I've never liked anyone this much. Because of you, Ethan will never be with me again. He says I'm cheap, says I'm dirty. She hadn't put on any fancy makeup but showed up barefaced and disheveled. Victor, do you want me to die? Is this really my fault? I glanced out the window and saw a couple holding hands walking by. Michelle, you have to have a conscience. Ha, conscience. Michelle scoffed and then suddenly whipped out a fruit knife and lunged toward me. Victor, you've ruined everything for me, I'm going to kill you. She swung the fruit knife, and I quickly dodged to the side. In the end, Michelle missed and fell to the ground. The sharp fruit knife cut across her delicate face, leaving a long and gruesome scar. In an instant, blood gushed everywhere. The people around us, who had been sipping coffee, all stood up as Michelle attacked me. At that moment, seeing the scene unfold, the entire cafe fell silent. Ah! Michelle suddenly covered the wound on her face, blood pooling between her fingers. At the police station, Michelle's parents sat beside her, her face already bandaged. Seeing me, Michelle's father was filled with rage. You, a 30-year-old man, claiming to be my daughter's boyfriend? I know it's you who harmed my daughter. Andrew slammed his hand on the table and shouted at me. I glanced at Michelle. Mr. Andrew probably doesn't know what happened. Why don't you ask your good daughter? I silently told Michelle, you tell your dad what you did. Michelle tugged at Andrew's sleeve. Dad? It's not him, it was my own fault, I acted impulsively. Fear flickered in her eyes, which Andrew saw right through. Don't be afraid, Mimi, Daddy will protect you. Michelle looked at me and then lowered her head. Andrew immediately clenched his fists and threw a punch at me. Just as Andrew's fist was only a few centimeters from my face, I held my phone out in front of him. In an instant, his eyes widened, and he seemed to lose all his strength. Dad! Andrew was gasping for breath, while Michelle reached out to cover my phone. Dad, let me explain. Andrew swung his hand hard and slapped Michelle, reopening the stitched wound on her face. Blood soaked through the bandage. You little brat. Mr. Victor really knows how to raise his daughter. She certainly knows how to please men. As I said this, I pulled out another page of chat logs to show Andrew. It was filled with indecent remarks, explicit enough to discuss what kinds of positions they liked. Andrew's face went pale with rage. But when his hand hovered over the wound on Michelle's face, he paused. I sneered, my gaze fixed on Michelle. Andrew dropped his hand and turned to me. Our Michelle wasn't like this before. You must have corrupted her. She wasn't like this before. The elderly father, as he spoke, began to shed murky tears. I put my phone away and said nothing more. Michelle turned out this way. Her parents surely have some responsibility. Due to the attempted injury and her good attitude towards admitting guilt, Michelle was only detained for a while. But her face would never go back to the way it used to be. About a month later, Michelle returned to school. She had no friends anymore, and her personality was completely different from before. She spent her days wearing a hat and a mask, keeping her head down and staying silent. During this time, Michelle's parents came to me several times, creating a scene. They just wanted me to pay for their daughter's medical expenses and pain and suffering. One day after work, Michelle's parents approached me again. It's all your fault that Mimi is disfigured, you must pay. Because Michelle's parents were constantly hounding me, I had already contacted a reporter. Sure enough, at that moment, the reporter stepped forward. Hello, are you Michelle's parents? What grounds do you have for asking Mr. Victor for compensation? We previously reported on the case of Michelle attacking someone with a knife. So is she claiming her own injury and demanding compensation from her ex-boyfriend? Upon seeing the reporter, Michelle's parents immediately tried to block the camera. Where did this reporter come from? Nonsense. But under the relentless questioning from the reporter, Michelle's parents fled in embarrassment. The reporter turned the camera towards me. Mr. Victor, can you tell us what really happened between you and your ex-girlfriend? I raised my hand to adjust my glasses and began to recount the recent events. The reporter I found is a popular self-media journalist on a short video platform, specializing in stories about emotional disputes. As soon as the video was released, it went viral. Michelle was once again thrust into the spotlight. The things she said in the cafe had already been recorded and given to the journalist. Every word from her mouth exposed this girl's twisted values. Our university is trending again. Is this ever going to end? Is this how a normal person thinks? If you don't like someone, why would you be with them? And then blame others for eating tender grass. Ugh. At the same time, a PowerPoint presentation was being circulated non-stop in the university chat group. 100-page long PowerPoint. It contained chat records, photos, and videos that I previously extracted from Michelle's phone. To make sure no one would get lost, I even made a relationship chart centered on Michelle. In just a few hours, the name Michelle became well known across the university. The next time I saw Michelle was at the hospital. She had suffered a breakdown from being the subject of gossip at school and developed a mental illness. At that moment, she was sitting on the hospital bed, fiddling with something in her hands, continually poking at it. I'm not a slut. That old man is trying to ruin me. I want to kill her. I want to kill him. Wearing a mask, I listened to her mumbling to herself, a smirk tugging at my lips. Even now, she still showed no signs of remorse. I turned to leave, And just as I reached the corner, I ran into someone unexpected, Ethan. Ethan was with a girl, carrying some fruit as they walked toward the patient's room. Curiosity got the best of me, and I followed. When Michelle saw Ethan, she immediately burst into tears. Ethan, I knew you loved me. You believe me, right? The last time, you were only angry when you hit me, right? I really do love you. She clung tightly to Ethan's hand. But in the next moment, he forcefully shook her off. Let go. Michelle fell to the ground, her arms scraping against the floor. The innocent-looking girl next to Ethan immediately stepped forward, wanting to help her. Are you okay? Claire, don't touch her, she's dirty. Ethan glanced at Michelle with disgust and said, while also pulling Claire back into his embrace. Oh. Claire withdrew her hand and linked her arm with Ethan's. You're Ethan's ex-girlfriend, right? Ethan's mom said you were unwell. So we came to check on you. How have you been these past few days? Claire's voice was gentle, but her words seemed to hit Michelle right where it hurt the most. She looked up at Ethan. Ethan? Who is she? Ethan pulled Claire in a little tighter. My girlfriend, Claire. Michelle suddenly laughed, and it was a terrifying laugh. Your girlfriend, huh? Your girlfriend. Seeing Michelle act so strangely, Ethan immediately took a step back while holding Claire. Michelle's gaze fell on Claire's hand. Last Valentine's Day, you let me choose a gift, and I picked this bracelet. I waited and waited, hoping and wishing, but in the end, all I got was a bunch of perfunctory roses. Come on, I'm allergic to pollen. So you bought the bracelet but gave it to someone else. Ethan, you're really cruel. You played me so badly. I liked you for so many years and was willing to fall for you. Turns out I was just someone you toyed with. Michelle's tone was sorrowful, her eyes glistening with tears. But Ethan only looked at her coldly the whole time. My mom said, considering the connections between our families, I should come see you. I've already come. You, take care of yourself. After saying that, Ethan took Claire's hand and left. Michelle sat on the ground, hugging her knees, burying her head in the crook of her arms, crying uncontrollably. It was heart-wrenching. I had pushed her so many times, yet I had never seen her cry so genuinely. Indeed, the deepest wounds often come from those we care about the most. The next day, Michelle sneaked out of the hospital. She rushed into Claire's school and hit her with her car. This time, because of her harmful actions, she was completely locked away in a psychiatric hospital. I watched through the hospital's fence as she was bullied by others. They threw her food in her face, yanked her hair, and tossed her bedding on the floor, stepping on it. Michelle just stared blankly. She has always been a good actress. If I hadn't seen Ethan visiting her, maybe I would have fallen for her act too. She was just trying to escape from her fate. Long time no see. Michelle and I sat in the visiting room of the psychiatric hospital. A long scar spread across her face, making her look somewhat frightening. At that moment, she stared at me vacantly, her gaze lost. Who are you? I smiled gently and leaned in close to her ear, whispering, Michelle, do you really not recognize me? Her body stiffened for a moment, and she even held her breath for half a second. I gave her a warm smile and stepped back. I'm here today to surprise you, and I think you're going to love it. I pulled out the ring box from my pocket along with the property deed for a house and placed them in front of Michelle. Michelle's eyes widened significantly, but she still struggled to maintain a look of confusion. I didn't mind. I just wanted her to understand what she had truly lost. I originally planned to propose to you on your birthday. Look, it's your favorite style, right? I opened the ring box to reveal a diamond ring lying quietly inside, sparkling brilliantly. I spent a month planning this proposal. I placed a proposal planning document in front of her. I even prepared a house just like the one you wanted, a big apartment by the river. Michelle, did you really think I was just playing with you? I stared at her unblinkingly. As Michelle's gaze flickered, I took back the property deed and the ring. Tisk, luckily, fate is on my side, and I'm grateful you were never greedy enough. Lucky for me, I found out your true colors. Michelle looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of pleading, indignation, guilt, and regret. I reached out to touch the 2 tears about to fall from her eyes. My dear girl, you could have been so happy. I withdrew my hand, stood up, and started to walk away. Suddenly, Michelle ran after me and hugged my waist. No! Don't leave me! I pried her fingers off one by one and continued walking forward without looking back. Michelle wanted to pursue me, but the doctors and nurses had her under control. They all thought she was having a breakdown. Only I knew that her world had collapsed. I watched her through the railing, and in her eyes, there was an unfathomable despair. Victor, I was wrong. I was wrong. She shouted at the top of her lungs, tears streaming down the jagged scar on her face. Michelle's voice echoed throughout the entire psychiatric hospital. I watched helplessly as they injected her with a sedative and then dragged her inside. Then I turned and walked out of the hospital. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly.